one of the best trailers. It was a ridiculously good-looking trailer. I still haven't seen the movie. I saw large parts of it because about 5 weeks into the pandemic, I took my daughters to a drive-in theater that was open in California. It was the only place open, and I took them to see Trolls World Tour while I watched parts of Bloodsport on a different that was playing on a different screen without any audio that I could hear.
You got Lamorne Morris being amazing from New Girl, Isaac Gonzalez, Vin Diesel, the guy J.J. Perry who did all the fights. He did the fights in Haywire and Captain America: Civil War. Yeah. Weta did the special effects. So listen, it's not a Steve McQueen movie, but I dig it. I like it. And one more thing for you. I just want to let you know. So in '99, LL Cool J had an interesting year. Right. So he was in Any Given Sunday, and he played for the Sharks. And then he was in Too Deep, where he played a character named God.
Oh, that's right.
He was in Deep Blue Sea, and he was Preacher.
It's all cosmic. I mean, the funny thing is, I interviewed him. I was only 23. I interviewed him for Entertainment Weekly's website for Deep Blue Sea that summer. And I was really nervous because I had to go to it was some insanely ritzy Midtown Manhattan hotel where I'd never been in a place that nice in my life. And it's he's go up to the interview. I just remember I enter the room and he is just looking out the window with his arms up against the glass, looking out pensively at Manhattan. It was his last interview of the day. And I was like, oh, he does not want to sit down with me. But I had to ask him about the Any Given Sunday fight because it had just come out in the trade, in the newspapers that week, and I was so green. I was so nervous, did you get into a fight with Jamie Foxx on Any Given Sunday? But he was and I remember him being really contemplative and really he gave me some fairly thoughtful answer that I probably cut down to one sentence and put on EW.com at the time. But he was great. He was one of the first celebrities I ever interviewed in person, I guess. This was 21, almost 22 years ago, I guess.
Oh, that's cool.
He had a very good 99. He's very good in both those movies.
Everything I've heard about him. So Steve Miner, when he talked about LL Cool J on Halloween H2O, he would just stay on set and watch. He wanted to watch Jamie Lee Curtis. He wanted to watch the actors doing what they were doing. And then on this one, Rennie Harlan said all the other actors were complaining. That's why he loved LL so much, because LL, he could slide him down a hallway. He could dunk him in any water he wanted, stuff him in an oven.
Put him in an oven, yeah.
Yeah, and he just loved, I guess LL was the best dude to work for on this. So Harlan's I can't wait to work with him again. So that's kind of cool. He got in the he's making NCIS money now.
Yeah, but I really think that those late 80s, early 90s musicians who were being cast in movies, I think you can tell a lot of them took it really seriously. I mean, Will Smith was famous for asking directors tons of questions. I mean, I think Ice Cube was kind of the same way, and they all wound up becoming, Will Smith became a producer and ran his own production company. I mean, I think musicians, those people they've been performing since they were young teenagers, and clearly at this point, in the 90s, they were in their late 20s, early 30s. They must have known that they were going to be athletes in some way. That at a certain time, that acting was going to be their second act, really. So he was probably really smart and was if I can learn as much as I can, they'll keep casting me. And he had a pretty good film run for a while. He had a good TV run and everything. He always struck me as a very savvy guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I never watched a single CSI with him and Chris O'Donnell, but
I know they're making money though. That syndication stuff right there. Yeah, but let's see. Any final thoughts, Jay or Brian, about this scene that we watched?
Well, I mean, we talked about the film knowing what it is. You've got Preacher's kind of final line in the scene where it's brothers never make it out of situations like this. So the film knows it's a horror film. The characters in it know they're in a horror film. I like that self-referential nod. I was trying to find what films before this have a character of colour survive to the end. And it's very few. I got 5. I got The Thing, Dawn of the Dead, Event Horizon, House on Haunted Hill, and this. And House on Haunted Hill's the same year. There's not many. So I completely see his point of he's likely to die.
Does he survive H2O? Is his character?
Yeah.
H2O.
I haven't seen that one.
He gets his head grazed with a bullet, and everyone thinks he's dead, but then he comes back. He's like, I can't wait to write about this. Yeah, so he lives in that. He survived Michael Myers and genetically modified super sharks.
Nice, but that line he's giving is the whole dialogue. The dialogue in the whole film is basically ADR. We talked about a previous scene where the set was overrun with crickets, and they had to re-record all the dialogue. And that line of his is one of the most obviously ADR lines, I think. As he's walking away, his mouth is not moving. It's the back of his head, but I have to bring it up. But it's a great line. It's a kind of a trailer line, I think.
I love that you brought the crickets and Rennie Harlin saying, he's like, I didn't want to kill the crickets. Like, I guess they could have fumigated the set, but he didn't want to murder them because, like, when you look at them, they're big and they look kind of like real things. So he had people on set trying to catch these thousands of crickets.
That must be a Finnish thing too. That must be some sort of a being communal with nature, even if it's a bug that keeps me awake 6 months out of the year that I personally would like to send into space. But yeah, good for him for being so quick and compassionate.
That seems like a job they would have given me in my early days on set. I've done some weird stuff like that. No, that would have been me chasing crickets around. For sure.
We have another door closing. We keep making note of how many times doors are opened and closed in this film. Mark did a full ranking a few weeks ago of all of the doors closing in the film. Where does Susan closing this underwater door come on your list, Mark?
I'd say, okay, because it differs every day, but I put it at 12 right now.
Okay.
Because
out of 28, with a 28 ranking.
Oh, 20, yeah. So, actually 29, because I forgot 29. To add that one, the plane in the beginning. But knowing what I know now, that she's locking herself in with the shark, it makes me laugh. So just, when you're watching it, you don't see it coming, but when you've watched it before, so yeah, 12, easy number 12. I wouldn't put it in single digits, but I don't see it in the 20s.
Would it work better if we knew at this point that the shark was in there? If we cut to the shark watching her? It's kind of the Hitchcock tension thing where, if you know there's a bomb in the bus, it makes the scene more interesting than if the bomb just explodes later.
But then it wrecks Chekhov's shark dummy.
Yeah, we need the shark dummy. Yeah.
That's a good gag.
It is. That's next week.
So wait, so like a Jason Voorhees watching her go in?
Yeah. Like cut to the shark, play some kind of interstitial music that is watching her. I don't know. A different level of tension.
Do that. The sharks in this movie, like when you see them, they're in action. Like he really doesn't. He doesn't cut to them as observers at all.
Well, we've had a few shots from underwater with the camera looking up where you kind of think, is that the shark's point of view?
Yeah.
And I like to think that it is. It could just be an interesting angle to shoot from, but I like to think, the shark's just there waiting. But yeah, you're right. Whenever we rarely see the sharks stationary. Because they don't keep swimming forward.
Is so good. Oh, Conti's work, Jay.
Yeah.
Like the guy who did Anaconda did this movie. And so just the sharks that he created. That shark actually exploded through that room. I don't know if you heard that story. It got a little out of control and it jumped up in the air and wiped out a bunch of 2x4s.
Oh, wow.
And then they had to fix it because they said that shark could swim 45 miles an hour.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, I reviewed the commentary and special. I mean, I do have 9 hours of Deep Blue Sea behind the scenes on my DVD, plus the instructions on how to use my DVD remote to access them. So
well, that's the rest of your birthday sorted out, isn't it?
Yeah, the documentary's on there. You can go into the decompression chamber on the DVD, which is really annoying. When you go to special features, then you got to click decompression chamber to get to the extras.
I so miss special features. I really wish. I know Criterion does them and Kino represses with special features, but man, I really nowadays it's just like you watch a movie, then you go listen to a podcast about it, which is great. I've had the experience where I walk out of a theater and then I immediately look for the Big Picture or Mark Barron, whoever interviewed the filmmaker, and listen to a really good in-depth interview. But I do miss, I wouldn't have time to watch most commentary tracks nowadays because I have kids, but I love them so much, and they were so crucial to me learning about how movies are made.
Brian, you got anything to kind of plug before we get out of here? Is there anything you want to promote?
Nothing to plug. I'm like a lot of people in my station. I am taking some time off to do distance teaching at home, so I'm taking the rest of the year off, I think, from work. So I'm just I'm plugging. I want to give a shout out to the fourth graders here in Burbank Elementary School. They're doing great. Really support their work online if you can.
Well, thank you for taking your time to join us.
That was fun. Thanks for having me. Yeah, you got it, guys.
Jay, anything to plug?
Listeners, you can find this podcast at Deep Blue Sea Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or email us deepblueseapod@gmail.com and find the podcast everywhere podcasts can be found. You can read more of my writing over at lifevsfilm.com, Life vs. Film, and I was recently a guest on the Exploding Helicopter podcast. We've had Will Slater on to talk about the exploding helicopter scene a few months ago at this point. I was on his show to talk about Rampage, so that should be up if not by the time this comes out, then soon. Mark, where can people find more of your stuff?
Yeah, just head over to Movies, Films, and Flicks. Check out that data article about Lord of the Rings and the Before franchise. Listen to the podcast, Movies, Films, and FIX. We just hit, number 2 in Vietnam. We were number 1 in, I had a long run in, where did I have I forget what country. I had a long number run in a country recently. But yeah, check out Movies, Films, and Flicks. And I also work for Rotten Tomatoes, so listen to Rotten Tomatoes is Wrong podcast. Watch the Versus video on YouTube. And then for the Film Theorists on YouTube, I wrote a video about how Aquaman set a bunch of endangered creatures into battle when he didn't have to. So, so check out that episode at Film Theory. You'll see a thing about Aquaman, so check that out. But, well, this was fun. So thank you for joining us, Brian.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
All right, so for me, Mark Hoffmeyer.
Me, Jay Cluett.
This is Deep Blue Sea, the podcast. We'll see you next week.
Bye.